Soul regenerating line grounds. High centers of sequence, line position locations, body framing. Coming into positions and readjusting, reforming, recalculating, realigning. The conceptual setting to the mind inception itself. The soul, its provider to its server, gets in communication lines balance. So the body has to come into the locations at all levels, recognizing exactly what's everything done into its equation, puts everything up process, gauging, forming, shaping lines of anomaly. Puts everything lines to the body, knows exactly what's coming into cell modification, cell regenerating, line communication, and power acceleration lines of cell. So we modify the information bits. Now it's going to get more complicated now because we're going to go through information panels. The power conception and timeline is processed the information line grounds. Now that position your divots, your davits, time plates, your set location, your Sumerian cortex into your Sumerian text, into your solar text, into your content, in your information, into your panels, into your data, into your streaming, into your Gulf streaming, into your directions of locations. So we have to modify time flux over grounds and 4 lines of travel. Set lines of north, east lines of settings, west line, ground lines of south over travel communications. All right, so west lines of line course centers, east lines of line communication lines of north, east lines of south, and line connecting system in NEWS. As processed on the wind directions, process lines of settings. Lines of west, lines of east, east lines of west, north lines east. Now it's all about understanding how to come into position locations and square roots, and triangulation positions, process line direction, power acceleration setting, and time set location of square root. Travel point lines of graph into 144 flux, into 1 travels and communication setting, to 1 settings, and XT1000. And XT1000 is extremely important to your system because that puts you in the I conceptual time frame. Hours and indication setting, hours and seconds, minutes and hours. Flights and manifestations, line communication with process, engaging, forming to its position of its DOS. Time centers, time set locations, time squares, time panels, line connection system, and line category centers and calculation setting. That's all position lines of travel. Converting lock line grounds into 42 line rotations and travel. 50% marks, 3 ground centers, lines of signals, 42 streaming, directing ground lines, operation lines, and set calculations. Converting box frames, travel course centers, calculating frame lines, inset location system, inset lines of travel. Author operation system, inset calculation. Okay, scene information line grounds and information bits. Channel markers, information lines, high center locations and platforms into astral projections of self, lines, modification grounds. Center lines position of cell, regeneration screen locations and settings. Okay, so coming into the position locations to your setting, your XT1000. Okay, high rise is everything location setting to your box and window frames. Okay, so coming to that position, simpleton is process lines of 3 angles and 4 lines of grounds. That puts all position locations, measure, and scale. So your information to your data and your intels have to truly understand how to modify its own cell of its own broadcasting location system and understand its energy and its formation grids across location settings that formulates the system all through travel. So it's all about understanding the Gulf streams. Understand how to go through directions and the positions where the body has to recognize its own line communication north, west, south, and east. That's seen all line position. Set 4 lines of travel. Set here at 2 panels, 4 panels into bridging over line screen. Okay. Now the information bits is 10,000 line centers. Okay, 3 centers of travel, 2 centers of measure, 1 center of scale. There's a triangulation above location, right? Now we have to have an equilibrium ground. It goes in the line set location. Travelers and mapping line operation, and you got satellites, 2 centers of travel, and converting line core centers, 42 lights of streaming, process lines of data, information cycles, regenerate communication, solve generation line calculations. Process line, there's outline signals that outline space and travel communication, converting timeline locks, high centers lines of travel, converting high operation signals into forwarded streamings and direct lines of grounds. Platforms over E lines, operations at location, your Wi-Fi, your satellites, and your towers. Okay, so we go through the high line course, time centers, in-line operation, yards and meters, metrics and scales, platforms, and line center location system, all through travel. Okay? Remember, it's on the eyes, the windows of the soul. Now, the position of the body has to understand the alignment of its adjusting. So it understands, I'm the body, I'm recognizing the program is recognizing me. We recognize each other because you're talking to yourself at a higher frequency. I have a higher modem, higher affinity, higher define, higher line, higher communication, higher operation, higher travel, higher operation setting. So it's indicating you how to process your personal traits and your personas, knowing exactly where those voice panels are coming from the information system that goes into the information bits. Now it has 10,000 seconds per second per square. Now the square box has this triangulation box line. Fortitude screening, location setting to electrical line grid. Now that processes the 10,000 line centers into 10,000 routes over lines of north in position as settings. So that's direct and redirect, process lines of line connection setting, time flux over time square. Travels endpoint lines graph in fortitude lights in position in the 12 center rotations, 12 centers of panels, and 12 cent calculation lines in position location system through your simulation. Okay? So I'm just trying to get you guys aptitudes in your amplification systems all through travel, where the information of its cells comes into cell regenerating, cell modification and power accelerators. Your flux line time frame location. Body just understands the adjustment and alignment, so it understands the program. And once the program understands the body understands the programming, then we're in position of balance and we integrate line communication, converting line position of center, operation, and setting. But the cell regeneration position location puts all time frames in position, no time frames. No time frames, no time frames, all time frames. So you have process how to get out of the routine, out of structure, out of division, out of design. You have to come into your own imagination setting that process the body. It's already gone through this already through its adjustment to its alignment system. So once the body recognizes its release, its intel, and information sending information bits, process location comes in molecular structure. Now, molecular structure is the 3 provision lines of panel. Okay, process line position of 3 lines of settings, 3 atoms, lines of position, lines of correlations. They 3 convert the system all through travel. Okay, so it's getting a lot more complicated for you guys understanding these the bandwidths over setting. Triangulation over here and triangulation over here and depth over line. Process line direct centers has a flux line graph line course centers in position. Now the graph communication center has 13 square roots. Okay, and set position operation setting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 line signals, 8 lines of travel, 8 lines of center. Flux over line rotations and 3 grounds of settings. So the process line is a position of 3 over 4, position of 4 over 3. Position of 3 over 4, positions of 4 over 3. Okay? So it's going back and forth, back and forth. Process position of templates, line course centers, temperature readings, barometers and thermometers. It set correlations of time centers. It set calculations of time frame. Process lines of equilibrium processes platform location setting to 144 flux. Channel operation, channel waters, directing lines and lines, course centers, line position, location, metric, meters, and scales of panels. Process that direct location setting, converting timeline locks in set location to its travel. Okay? So converting timeline centers in 4 centers of flux, 5 centers of measure, 6 lines of scale. Okay? Inset lines of communication, 9 lines of frames. Travel. And so all that's happening right now is the soul is processing the body, and the body has to understand the alignment, adjust, and recognize, okay, I'm the body, I'm recognizing the body, body's recognizing me, I'm recognizing myself. So you understand the modification, how you come into your personal traits and your personas to your information system. So this is about cell regenerating, cell modification, and reproduction. Now, once we understand the seconds, minutes, and hours, we can understand the hours, minutes, and seconds. Once we understand that, then we understand light years, which is space itself. Modify that position puts you in the mind of collaboration to a system. So we're coming out of body frame, now we're coming to the mind of body frame and projection of light. So once we recognize that, we understand that we're always in the eyes of set position. That process everything that we bring in is nothing but astral projection itself. The observer, the box frames, the triangulation frames, the process line direct centers, all in lines of the communication system, all through face recognition system, all through travel, how you want to see yourself in calculation. Okay, so it's the body that has to adjust and align itself, recognizing it's already done everything already. So the soul provides its timer and line position location and brings everything back to the center of a region set location, soul regeneration system, and cell modification. Reproduction setting is reproduce. Now reproduce is multiple level line position your cells. So each cell has a Patrick line course centers, direct lines of grounds, has a plasma shield around the location system and travel. Okay? So each cell is a modification inside of center to a bridging system off the set position of travel. Okay? So they line each other and they molecule line rotations of travel, converting lines of protons, electrons, neutrons, and photons all in one signal, one process communication system, all through setting, all through travel, inline operation system, and triangulation system, and satellites and set travel. Okay, so it's amazing how we see the flux and ground lines as that position of operation. So your cells become face recognition of patterns. As 3 molecules of 3-line rotations and 42 lights in outline center location travels, pattern recognition and face recognition. Your time centers and location system has an airline dynamics. The process lines of the earth line rotation has information bits. The process is communication system and soul generation lights. Set course centers, time frame, time flux, times calculation, times pi. Circulation, rotation lines, and grounds. Diapers, location, setting. Platforms over line rotations, 3 lines of signals, 4 centers of measure, 5 lines of scale. Platforms over line rotations puts all communication system and travel communication lines of grounds. Diapers and setting, also travel, right? So if we can recognize the high centers and position locations into low grounds, then we understand north, west, south, and east through a box and a window frame and triangulation setting to the simulation ground on communication. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? And it's all happening inside the eye itself through spectrum, which is nothing but a receptor that we see things that projects everything outside. We are the inside of our system. Now the body has to understand the adjustment to the alignment, so the soul finally sees your body through soul regenerating. So once it understands the reconfiguration system, then it understands course of time, central of time, communication of time, directing lines of communication, direct sync lines of time to line set position, because it's always in the presence of everything in that position. So bringing the mind of existing, always in that position locations, bringing the body position of balance of center, bringing the position of the soul of its provider towards engaging, forming, shaping its anomaly. That's process, communication setting, all through travel, all through communication, all through operation, line calculation, setting, and lines of graphs. Helps you to identify your system, how you modify your system, all through travel, so calculation. All through recognition, all through teleportation. Because that's all it is, just different vessels that the body goes through. And the body just has to align and know exactly, acknowledge, listen, and accept. Accept what's already happened. Okay? That's all it has to come into. And so the soul comes into the body now, and the body comes into the soul. They integrate each other. So either way, body, soul, soul to body, doesn't matter, because you just see the percentage of what's going on through time flux, body flux, or location setting that gets you in communication setting, how you come to gauging, viewing, analyzing, position, and setting locations. You're no longer separate in your mind. So processing through that, if you don't understand that position lines operating location, the body will basically lose concept of time, flux of time, body capacity of time, and set position all levels, and soul generation of time itself through loss of communication, loss of convention. That puts position location in line position of vast volume, velocity, and its vacuum. So it's in that position location, starting to recognize in that position of the body, understand what's going on through activation line, grounds, high set, position lines of travel, converting lines, operation, location, system, all through travel, calculating, modified through its recognition of time theory, time frame limitation. Right? All through equation. Because that's all it is teleportation. All right. So in that lines, grounds, it processes location, sending, and travel, converting timeline centers to time shares. Time calculates times pi, puts all position locations. So the body starts adjusting a lot more understanding. And the soul is starting to recognize the frame now. So let's recognize the outer frame to the inner frame, the inner spectral location setting, inner line setting. You have an inner valve to an outer valve. But it's an outer line position that you understand through projection. You're projecting out, but you are the inside that projects everything outside, inside of you, which is the eyes, the windows of your soul. Now, the soul is the provider, bringing the body back to itself, which is processes, travels to its atmosphere location, awakening lines of knowledge to its existing information setting, bringing each other back to one position, which is integrated in one, which is center operation setting. So that brings us that position of bridging back together in online centers, online sequence, online pi, all through triangulation lines box. Converting lines operation setting to face recognition system, all through travel. Okay? So recognizing that through platform, then you need to understand what you're doing through vessel communication, right? And understand what you're doing through your time flux, your body flux, and your body capacitor set position of operation, okay? Because that's all you're doing. You're bringing 3 faces of recognition settings. So the body recognizes its past, its present, and its future of center operation setting. That's always in the presence of everything that it does through travel. Now, understanding that, it's all identified line position location, your Earth, right? So your Earth can be anything in that position of its operation system, but it has to truly recognize its pattern face recognition. So the body has to understand more of the alignment of its adjusting. Okay? Mind's always going. Okay? Everything's always in the center of T frame. Now, T frame is like course centers of space, time centers, process lines of center operation. So get into spectacles, time frame, time calculation, correlation setting, lines of systematic line grounds. Operation lines of platforms, EQ platform line grounds, high center location of travel, process line direct centers, location system, all through set position of operation. See how I bring things in a platform? Right away. Grounds, powers, atmospheres, highways. Right there. Okay? So that's why you have to have grounds, powers, and atmospheres that you bring in. Understand the modulation setting, time measure location setting, space modulation system, understand your consoles, your time formats, your time flights, your connection set, your efficacy, your performance, your ESC, your escape value, your escape volume, your mass, your calculation, your square roots. So we go through escape lines 0, process lines 0, 1 over 2, set position of 3, 4 centers of 1, process lines of 3 over scale, process lines of 2. Remember I told you in business locations, you build a relation partnership with the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Once they process depositions, the escape, the systematic lines of communication goes into 3 grounds, 42 platforms of travel communication lines of balance. So this helps you identify your course centers of timelines, the center operation of you, which is always in the presence. So the body starts recognizing what's going on with 3, what's going on with 2, what's going on with 3, what's going on with 2, what's going on with 4. And all line position seconds, minutes, and hours. That changes flight paths, all position, location, setting of scale communication. Your alpha waves, set calculation lines of simulation grounds, high centers lines of travel, 13 scales, area self line center locations in 3 weather patterns, flux over screen, time passenger line tower center 0, 0, 0, process lines of 3 zeros over 1, 3 zeros over 2, 3 zeros over 4, 3 zeros over 6, 3 zeros over 9, and 3 zeros over 12, and set lines of travel. So high lines of charts, panels, grounds, high set locations to square roots over location of travel. Time centers and location system and platforms and set travel. Okay, so the drawing just gets a lot more complicated, okay, as the brain's trying to recognize more lines of time formats in its time center. Calculation lines is its capacity. Now the information line bits has divots and davits, the gigabytes, gigabytes, and gigawatts. Process location setting, timelines of location setting. Converted timeline centers of locking screen locations. Converting line operation centers. 42 lights over streaming and direction center. Okay, puts time centers over line locking line operation signals and location of time center, location of setting is the operation. Outside and inside line. See, that's outside looking in. So you have to truly understand how to measure the scales of communication system all through travel. All right, so capacity has point dots. Point here. Now this goes in position to your temperature readings, your barometers, and your thermometers, and know exactly how to go in the gauging lines of meters and scales of communication settings, slide projector, process line direct locations into longitude, latitude, streaming the lines to set location north, west, south, and east. Process area Gulf streams, indirect locations, pointing graphs of communication setting, seed pod cores, centers of near links, neural pathological connection line connection setting, colonization system, all through travels in position, location, point graph communication. Gets complicated, right? All through travel, all through recognition. Okay? So those point graphs are center graphs to your system. Now, that allocates centers like position location that measures your scales of your Gulf streams. That converts to time centers locking screen locations. Now that and that line center locations comes in box line frames. Box line 1, process lines of travel. Okay, there's a box line 1, right? And then we overline signals into box line 2. Over signals in center. Sets communication setting, lacing lines of 3-line rotation centers, and broadcastings over travel. So that indicates 1 box frame line to travel, indicate over lines of flux over 2 lines of travel. So that's snowy graph interference and 4 channels in screen location setting. Okay, so you go from one channel to the next. Okay, so it's getting a lot more complicated for you guys to understand these things because you have to understand how to go through your own broadcasting, your own systems, and lines of travel. Okay, readjusting and aligning. So your body just has to come into what? Its release, its inventory, its system, its operation. Everything's already done through its equation. So the body comes in its own broadcasting system, and the soul identifies everything to its provider of its system. That processes everything that comes in its own gauging, serving, and providing to its messaging of its system that travels in records of timeline. So it comes in line position, location, measure, and scale, process line direct centers into 4-line signals, inline operation and quantum entanglement, and location lines of travel. Okay? So that's all central graphs of communication setting that sets up road graphs screen locations to your higher self. So you open those signals. Okay, there's your panels, screen location, converting time frame lines of center. So this helps you to generate your system and your panels and location setting, each line signal location setting at travel. and process everything to the ceiling lines of operation lines of point graphs into data operation screen lines of travel. So this also helps you identify your process, how you come into your systems and your docking stations, docking base station, your hangar stations, your launch pads. Knowing how to process line position. Now, once you understand the point graphs and communication line grounds, your central system of your planets come in set lines of half line. And then they come in position location and higher center location to half line and travel communications. Covered in time frame and position of half line operation signals and half line rotation center to travel. So that puts all position your centers, the 3 lines of scales of communication setting and metric meters over line. Process line direct centers and location system all through calculation. Okay? So this helps you to modify your system in time frames where your body comes in more of adjusting system to its alignment to its soul generation system of its own geometrics operation of its design. Travel. Okay? So we got compass over line grounds, and we got compass over line ground center and surface, and compass location of space line travel. Okay? 3 converting time frames. Each one has an allocated time frame location setting. And we have provision line inside the location, which is the next 8,000 on standby. Okay? So the XT1000 goes to 1 frame inside center, goes in operation signals inside position, and it goes to another line signal, operation lines and settings travel, converting lines of volume, mass, and location to its time flux, its time capacitor, going through each one line signal, location, setting, all to travel. So that puts all process in that position location system all through solar panels, directing ground centers and line communication to ceiling operation location and clocking lines and formations and lines of its compass. I direct centers location system all through travel, all through communication setting, all through calculation. Okay? Whoa, it's a lot, isn't it? A lot going on in there of operation itself. Okay, so there's a lot going on in that position of its platform. Now we have to truly understand how the body has to process, gauge, and form itself to its own setting, of its own broadcasting of its own system, recognizing and adjusting and knowing it's already received everything achieved through collecting its system. So the body recognizes more of the time, and the soul recognizes more of the body. They connect with each other, they integrate each other. There's the vessel communication lines of balance. Now you're in the center operation of you, of the presence of everything you come into. In that position, it's operation, right? But I just really want you to recognize these things in that positions, how powerful it is, how you see it in travel. Okay? And everything that goes in process that communicates inside set position. Okay, so there you go. So getting that direct centers, we have 1 flight lines, 3 centers of measure, 4 centers of scale. Remember, use your inventory systems, how you see a 4. Okay, so there's a 4, right? That's a 4, right? Doesn't look like a 4, but it is. It doesn't have to be this. Okay, or it doesn't have to be this. You see what it is. Don't focus on anybody else, focus on how you see things. Because I already know, I already recognize you in that position. So you're here, it's here to help you, not the other way around. Now, once a body recognizes that, it recognizes itself through its self-modification, space modulation setting, all through its echo, flights, manifold, line center locations, manifold line position location, FAA, IPA, iOS, or DOS. It starts to recognize its own self back to itself. So you got a 4-line position of panel, process 1, 2, 3 lines of panels, process 3 centers, 3 center operation lines of signal. Okay? That indicates system all through travel. Face recognition. There's the face. Okay? Let's bring in the eyes. See? It's always a face. Always a face everywhere you look. It's a face, face, face. So I put a face in position. That's what it is in travels. Now the face is there and configures the system all through travel. So the face takes everything over of operation setting in platforms and set lines of travel. Okay? So each one has its own record of time flux. There's a time panel. And a time panel has a replacement grounds in the location system and travel. So that converts the time lock centers into 1 ground centers, 42 line streaming, 42 line operation, 42 locations, triangulation lines of flux, 3 centers of measure, 5 centers of scale, 6 lines of measure, line connection. Converting line operation signals in platforms and line rotation. Okay? Time centers of flux, time centers of measure. Okay? Now the altitude line position of XT1000 platforms is process communication lines of grounds. Process is direct case setting seconds, minutes, and hours, and flights. Travels point lines of graph, inside position. Connects line position location telepathy way. Outside, inside, inside, outside. So they panel each other, process on direct centers. Electric line grids, set course centers of time frame, times travel. all 3 set lines of operation. Okay? So it's amazing how you see it in all formats and set lines of travel. Okay? Recognizing the portal sequence is understanding the position of your flight manifolds in all through travel, all through communications, all through frame, all through operation setting, all through calculation grounds. But it's all position location system, all through set travel. All right? So find a way to get your own position lines of body, framing, line core centers, so generate line connection settings. So the soul understands information bits, information line positions, understand the location setting, converting line position, alteration lines of its ego. Coming into the ego line frame, okay, puts you in the information line grounds. Okay, so the 10,000 seconds, okay, comes into 20,000 seconds per square. And then it goes in 20,000 seconds per mile, and it goes in position, okay, square root, all through triangulation. Your body capacitor has a time flux. It flux line core centers and measure of 1 umbrella over 1, okay? And it has 2 templates, process lines of box frame and locations, 3 centers of travel, 42 line center locations, indicate line 0 line operation, 1 center line connection settings, 0 operation lines of travel, communication conversion. Directing ground centers, high centers of travel, cross line angles, operation signal. Now we go through platitudes into 144.1 grounds, into 4 lines of flights, 5 lines of measure, 6 lines of scale. Flight manifolds to its manifold, travels its point line graph, center operation system into the position of its dimensional sail of travel. There you go, through simulation, all through simulator. Simulation, position of box lines, triangulation over flux, over square roots, over triangulation. See, it's really interesting how you work with the game outside in, inside the game itself. And then you modify the astral projections, or you run programs, position lines of travel, inside lines of calculation. Okay? But again, you need an observer. Observer is the outline rotation in set calculations. Sees everything in monitoring and setting, all through travel. Okay? Watching everything of what's going on. Now you can just add 1 observer line position locations, or you can bring all observers all at 1 positions, all unit specifications in your travel. So converting time frame here, here, and here, here. Monitoring setting, monitoring locations, space moderation system, all through travel. Okay? Very powerful set lines of communication. Okay, directing line lengths puts all processes engaging, forming itself in the body. Body comes in the adjustment line core centers through its own broadcasting engine and its force field line caging, sending to its fields itself through operation to its quantum self. Quantum self lines of core centers, box frame core centers and calculations. 4 questions over mark, upside line communications and converting line time frames. 3 centers of measure, 2 centers of scale. 1 set line operation into 2 equals lines of 1, 1, 0. Question lines, time frame, line 0 equals lines of triangulation. Process lines of percentage over line grounds in position located 100,000 line square roots. Set lines 1,000 hours in frame. Okay, logging in 1 operation, 1 square root over triangulation, 42 4 centers, flux, travels, and direct lines of grounds. Okay, so you set that up through operation line grounds, and then you set up position, location, and gravity locks. Process here in directions and 42 location of streaming. Process here, here, and here, and operation setting. Okay, so it's easy to set up now, right? Because you understand that fast line track location, simulation, and grounds. But it's all line position location. Now you can have this in a triangulation box, like this, in that position, in line communication and setting. It's amazing when you go to that line connection system, all through square roots over triangulation. Work with the inside lines of space line, which is the void itself, right? Then you just bring it in as that position of operation itself, right? And then you bring in your programs. So the body starts to adjust now. Now you can bring in the coloration line grounds, different astral projections of time lines, process of red, and process of orange, and process of gold, and process of purple, okay, and process of pink, okay? So there's your program to set lines of travel. Okay, that's what you're working with, colorations. Each one has its own moderating setting of its own time frame that fluxes location system and calculation grounds. High operation lines of panels that process location setting that provisions its cycles and travel. Okay? So there you go. All through equation. All right? Good. So I just really want you to understand how to modify this in your simulation. Okay, knowing exactly how to go through EQ line centers and direct centers. Location lines are 12 grounds, information bits, information panels, clock and foundation location and pattern direction of time centers. But it's all position, location, measure, and scale. All right, so let's go through timeline locks, process here, and direction centers. Okay, so that's 8 channels of operation. It's not a time frame. I changed it. Remember, you can do anything you want. You just have to identify what you're doing. Equals setting equation. All right, so we got 7 line operation signals, 7/8. That process line's at 8. 1 line centers and 1 graph. 2 centers, 1/2. 3 centers of measure. 4 centers of scale, and dividing. Now this is where you come to multiplication, adding, subtracting, dividing, location, ratio, proportions. So 8 lines of setting, and process lines of 0, 0, 8. That process line core centers, time centers lines of 1 equals lines of 8. Set lines equals lines, 9 lines of setting. Process lines of 9, operation location 9 lines of provision. Okay, ground centers lines of travel. So that process line position lines of 6, process lines of 9, 12 lines of scale, and 24 clock and rotation surface and travel. Okay, so that converts to sine angles. Now we convert the timeline centers of 8 over channel, 8 over screen, and 8 in center of screen location. Converting time lock centers, location 3 provisions, set position 1, 2, and 3 centers of flights over travel. Directing ground centers and platforms, we go through EQ formation lines. That's 144,001 square rare. Okay, that's 1 root line settings and 1,4,000 line settings. Operation state location information bits. That process direct location to simulation. Ground centers into compass over lines of flights over travel. Directing ground center location lines to escape. Flight navigation setting, echo screens is Tango Tango Foxtrot. General AI is coming in line ground center location operations locations. Tango line screen locations into Rainbow Fox. Lima Fox, high upper signals and modifications over. Setting travels of communication grounds. High operation lines of panels. Changing ground lines operation setting and set location of signal. Setting signals in location setting to direct lines of panel. Sets communication high centers and location setting solar square roots, solar streams, solar directions, and solar calculation setting. All done through equation. Okay? So like I said, the structures are going to get more complicated now because you're coming into position in simulation to your self-tech. So you have to really recognize what you're doing as you're bringing in programs of operation. How many programs are you going to be running? Okay, how many programs are you going to be running all at once in set position operation? How many observers are you bringing in your system of travel? How many are positioners setting and running operator location your systems all through set position of travel? Okay, watching everything that's going on and all position and setting all through operation of the eye. Okay, easy peasy lemon squeezy. So there you go. Getting in this position, location of travel and directions. Okay, your settings and your 12 line rotations and set calculations. Okay, instant travel. Okay, so I know there's a lot going on, but there has to be a lot in position location that you already heard this already. So once the body understands the alignment and truly understands the metrics and its scales through its quantum, its nano, its cyber, its simile, and the process location of self-tech, everything becomes a lot more adjusting to information setting. The body starts to recognize the soul. And when the soul recognizes the body, they recognize each other in the same time frame, same time format, in the same algorithm of real time. That brings them in all timelines all at once. That keeps them at the center of operation setting. That's it, all through travel. Okay? But there's a lot going on in these equations in your system through time frame. Okay? So it's more expanding your system. So you understand how you get into triangulation. Now you have to go in position out of a triangulation and modify it because you're always in the eye line, right? Doesn't matter where you are in metrics and meters of scale. Position of here, longitude, and your latitudes, right? You have to understand your windows of your framing. Okay, and then you work with each box, each with one box at a time. So let's work with the line position locations in a southeast box, all right? Work with that position settings. Okay, go through line signals. 4 signals and line signals, right? Then we go through graph centers of operation pixelation grounds, okay? And then we bring in the position locations of tether, road graph, inside lines of travel. Okay, now it's inside, see? That's one box frame and one window frame, okay? Now just work with that, and then you work with the other line centers. But this time I'm gonna go this way, horizontally, just like this, right? Find different ways to get your box frame location and travel. Find different difference lines of perspective in that position. So we get 1 square root over travel communication, 1 signal location, north and south, right? And again, you bring in your grounds and some lines of operation. Inside again, right? So you work with that, and then you have the grounds, now you work with the top, okay? This is just through a box window frame. Then you go to triangulation box frame. Do what you want to do. All right, and then you can go into this line centers. You can go into Fibonacci like this inside, like this. Fibonacci rotation, right? And again, you got to bring in the grounds, right? Everything has to have a grounds. Everything you bring in through simulation, right? So now it's inside, right? And it goes to that position locations and sending wavy lines. Radiograph interference, line position lacing lines of communication. So we got 4 different window frames of perspective, how I see the road graph, the powers, the atmosphere, location, and its highway. Okay? All right, same position here, here, and here, and all through travel. Okay? There you go. All inside, outside, inside position, right? All through the eyes in 4 different directions. Okay? Processing everything all at once. That's how your cells work in modification. 4 centers of 1. 6 centers of 1, 8 centers of 12 centers of 1. They all come back to the center operation of the sending operation node itself. The information bits processed, calculate sending, how it goes into the seconds, minutes, miles, and meters, and metrics of scale. Now, how you process that is how you communicate to your systems all through settings and window frames. Okay, so that is your next test next Friday. Stay tuned for more. Next Friday is your test. Test is coming up on Friday. This is your test for next Friday. Okay, so I'm giving you 7 days ahead of schedule. Right? So that's your test for Friday. I want to see 4 different lines of windows and box frames into ground lines of setting. Okay? You don't have to go through your system. I just need to see the grounds. Okay? Because that's where we're processing through. Because this is all identified. You have to see 4 box frames in the simulation grounds all at once in modification settings. So you have position locations. How many running programs are you going to have? Okay, process of here. Okay, 3 running programs in one setting. That's South 1 East. Line position location South Line West. 4 centers of travel. Is that position inside travel. And lines of Fibonacci and grounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, 24, 48. 48 running here in that operation. And position of 2 in that position lines of travel through lacing line communications. So there you go. Running all at once in 4 window box frames. That's your test on Friday. Next Friday, that's already here in position. That's already done through its equation. Your body just has to recognize 4 different frames of travel. That's it. 4 different levels of programming. Running all at once. All the perspective that you come into is the truth that follows the narrative that you get in position of. Now, getting an line division, you can process indicates lines of position lines of mainframes. Center frames, calculations, high centers, square roots over triangulation over pi. Okay. Process line direct centers, you can start with this. You can do it this way, right? And set up the road graphs all at once, like this, see? It just gets much easier as you put it inside, right? But you start individually. Start with 1 box frame, okay, from the bottom and the top, okay? And then you bring in the grounds of operation, okay? And then you bring in the line signals a lot more so you can see what's going on. It's that position, it's operation system that platted to your systems all through travel and communication. Okay, so now you're seeing inside, all 3 all at once, but you're expanding out the outside division now, okay? So it gets a lot more complicated, but you stay in line centers of location setting of travel. Okay? That's what it means. Stay within the line. Okay? So stay within the line. Don't go outside the line. Do not do this. Stay within the lines. Do not go out. Okay? Because it changes the frequencies of your boxes. All right, so stay in provision. Starting calculation lines, basic levels. 4 centers of travel. Okay? All different running programs all at once. That's what I want to see. That's your test on Friday. Okay, that's what I want to see. I want you to understand how to go 4 different levels of travel, running all at once. Okay, good. And we're on the same course, so that's same position operation setting. All right, so that convergence system puts process of direct centers location in your system all through calculation. Okay, so there you go. Lots going on, isn't there, through soul regenerating. I'm just giving you higher levels how to use your information bits, how to use panels, how to use calculation system. Setting calculation lines of grounds, set position on Thursday, comes in line travel to that position locations. We'll come into codification grounds, how to come into process direct centers and location system, and the molecular structures of design. Okay? Adios.